Avengers Doomsday, or whatever portmanteau you want to adopt for that clash. You are right to bring that up because you have Doomsday is costing something like $2 billion. It's an outrageously expensive movie, and according to reports, is going to be about 3 hours long, which is wild. And then you have Dune Part 3, which was rushed into production, so you got to know that's pretty expensive too. I think it's probably a $300 million budget. But we'll bring the Paul Atreides story to a close. We'll see how long that lasts. If you've read the Dune books, you know what I'm talking about. It's interesting that the two would clash, and it seems like the hope is from Disney, Marvel, and from Warner Brothers is that this will be the next Barbenheimer, where everybody went to see Oppenheimer and Barbie the same weekend because they're battling it out and which is better, and it became this sort of cultural moment, this phenomenon where everybody had to go and see both movies, which were both big blockbusters.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. If it's Friday, it's time for another episode of Entertainment Exposed right here on the Left of Straight Podcast Network. I'm your host, Scott Fullerton, and of course, hosting with me each week, the handsome and talented Mr. David Reddish. David, how are we doing?
I'm doing all right, Scott. How are you?
I am amazing. You have a great shirt looking today. I like that shirt. Is that
picked
a
it up in
homemade
Palm
or is it
Springs.
one off the rack?
I picked it up in Palm Springs over the weekend where we had record-breaking heat. It was 108 degrees, which is the highest temperature ever recorded in March in North America.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's a little hot there. I don't like it that hot there, but goodness gracious. Yeah, I remember you're going for a birthday weekend there. Did you have a good time at least?
Yeah, it was really chill. My friends were all in from Chicago. They just kind of wanted to sit by the pool at the Airbnb the whole time. That I got a little restless, and it had nothing to do with them. But I get restless because I get to go to Palm Springs more often, so I like to be a little bit more social. I run into people I know. But the other thing is, I'm like translucent. I'm like one of those fish from the bottom of the ocean, wherein you can see my spleen, like in the right lighting. So I cannot be in the sun, and we had limited shade by the pool. So I really couldn't be outside very much between that and the heat. So I got a little restless at a couple points, but I still had a great time. It was still great to see everybody.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. We'll talk about your upcoming weekend at the end here.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, I want to jump back to one of last week's stories. We had a lot of great response on our coverage of the Oscar tributes last week.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, it's on my notes, totally my fault. The day before the Oscars on Saturday, they had a big send-off to our friend Sally Kirkland.
Yeah.
And so it was a big memorial done at the church right down the street from there, the Methodist church.
Yeah.
Our buddy Jason Stewart spoke. Our buddy Mel England spoke. I got a couple of clips from it, different things. So it had such a great in memoriam at the Oscars, and we've got great response to our episode. I needed to add Sally's little thing in the day before because it was a really lovely ceremony.
Yes, and as we've discussed on the show before, she was part of the in memoriam tribute at the Oscars itself. She didn't get a special shout out, but she was featured pretty prominently, Oscar-nominated actress. And as we talked about on the show before, she was always, from the very, very early days from the 1960s, she was a big advocate for gay rights, big advocate for marriage equality. She was a great friend to the community and a terrific actress. She was
huge in HIV awareness.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up. Thank you for letting me do that. I think we have to bring back also The Rock and the Gosling of it all because they had a good start there. Of course, we were wondering how the movie's going to go. What did you hear on this?
On Project Hail Mary, you mean?
On Project Hail Mary, it had a boffo weekend, as they used to say. It needed to make $500 million to break even and had a good start with 160. I was impressed.
Yeah, we'll see if they break even, if the movie has legs. I'm hearing only good things. I have not seen it yet. I was not invited to any critic screenings, and I've been too dang busy, even if I was. So I've not gone. But studio executives, if you're listening, call me. The point of this story is that it's doing very well. It's a hard science fiction movie. The same director as The Martian, and Gosling is very very good in this. If you've seen a film called Blade Runner 2049, which I actually think is one of his best performances, he seems to fit very very well with more cerebral, darker science fiction stories. It's
Right.
interesting that he's also going to be in the next Star Wars film, which is coming up pretty quick. Not the Mandalorian Grogu, the next one after that.
Right.
It's coming on pretty quickly. He remains one of the few big stars that can actually open a movie and that is considered bankable, as is The Rock. So good news for them, good news for Hollywood, which is still kind of flailing. We're still not seeing a whole lot coming out. And with these big studio shakeups, with the big change
Right.
in leadership at Disney, Josh D'Amaro took over last week as the CEO of the company. With all the sort of big shakeups going on at Paramount, with the Ellisons buying it, and now with Warner Brothers, with that sale sort of being in limbo, we don't know. There's a lot of opposition in town toward the Ellisons getting their hands on Warner Brothers because what they really want is CNN, something that's even evidenced by
Right.
remarks from the White House. They want to overhaul CNN's coverage and limit American journalism. So we don't really know what's going to happen with the Warner Brothers buyout.
Yeah,
There's
it's going
just
to
a
be
lot
very
of
interesting. I
balls
mean,
in
it
the air.
made a lot of people feel a lot better about the weekend. It was Ryan Gosling's highest open ever, the highest
Uh-huh.
opening of this weekend, highest opening for Amazon. So it had a lot of good news. I think the other good news for it is there's nothing coming out next week except for a horror film. It tends to do good. It has a decent cast. I think it has Tom Felton from the Harry Potter
Yeah.
franchise, and who else did it have in it? Oh, I don't know, but it's a horror movie, so it doesn't have a lot of competition next week. So everyone was worried that it needed to make all this money to recoup a $280 million project, but the 180 million worldwide helped that a bit, and with those soft opening, they think they may get lucky on it. So I wanted to start with that, but what's on your first pick for the week?
Well, it's funny because I actually want to jump back to another topic from last week because there have been some new developments also, which is the staking of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer New Sunnydale, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer revival. This is
Cupcakes.
interesting. This is interesting because there's been a lot more that has come out in the past week, including Sarah Michelle Gellar doing interviews and being very, very candid about the status of the revival. It's interesting because she acknowledged that the script has leaked online, but is discouraging people from even looking at it because apparently this was not the final script. There is another rewritten version
Right.
that they actually used for reshoots. She said, what's on the page is not actually what was going to be on screen and it doesn't properly represent the project. There are also rumors that the pilot has not leaked, but is going to leak. It's something that a lot of Buffy fans in the business who might have access to it really want to see. And she's discouraging people from actually watching it because the pilot was never actually finished. The special effects aren't done. It's a
Right.
rough edit. Chloe Zhao, who directed it, did not really have the chance to go back in and morph it in the way she wanted. And these remarks are all very interesting to me because it's also come out. There's now a counter narrative emerging that the new cast was terrible, which is something Geller denies. She says she loved the new cast. She thought they were all great, but that the cast was rough. That Chloe Zhao's did not her approach to the material wasn't exactly right. We talked about this a little bit before,
Yeah.
but that she was not used to directing television, so that the pilot was very, very hard to follow in places, that the performances were very, very rough, because directing a pilot for television is very different than
Yeah.
directing a movie. You really, really, really have to pay attention to the performances and the personalities of the actors because you have to set up what's going forward rather than what's going to exist in a vacuum. Apparently, Chloe Zhao did not really do that very well. There was conversation about the state of Buffy, which it seemed like from where they were going, we don't know this for sure, but the thing that came to mind when I read the script over Sarah Michelle Gellar's wishes, the thing that sort of came to my mind was the treatment of Luke Skywalker in a film called The Last Jedi, which some people truly,
Okay.
truly hate. I think it's a near masterpiece and the best Disney Star Wars movie that has yet come out. The objection, the controversy seems to be over Luke Skywalker is old and bitter and has given up on his Jedi powers because It's a long story, but he's old and bitter. But the story of that movie, the character arc for him in that movie is him remembering who he is and regaining his powers. And it seems like Buffy was going to have a similar treatment of she had destroyed the Hellmouth at the end of the show. She was no longer using her powers. She was sort of in retirement. And she was going to be very reluctantly dragged back to being the Slayer and to leading this new team against the resurgent vampires in Sunnydale. I think that's interesting. If you want, just more of the same and you want everything to be exactly the same as the old series, we've talked about before, there are all kinds of reasons why that's problematic and why that can't really work and why it would be just kind of dead in the water if they tried that. It doesn't look at this point like anyone else. I know other studios are asking. There has been some interest
Right.
reportedly from entities like Netflix to pick up the show and actually have it go forward. But because Disney and Fox actually own the rights to Buffy and, Hulu's wrapped up in all of this, it doesn't seem very likely that it will happen. Nevertheless, there is also talk of maybe doing a revival with Sarah Michelle that may or may not involve Chloe Zhao, that may be a clean restart because there is a lot of fan interest in this. And it does seem like there is an audience for it. So I don't know. It's one of those interesting things. It's sort of like everyone saying, well, don't look at the pilot, kind of makes you want to look at it even more to see where they were going with this. And as you and I have said on the show before, part of me wonders if the reaction to it or the reaction that Hulu/Disney was anticipating was that adults who grew up on this show and didn't
Right.
notice how it was very much a product of its time or how the effects really haven't aged well or other elements of it haven't aged well or how they're integrating elements of Gen Z's generational personality. There was the thought that maybe they would look at the new show and not see what they had seen before or that it was updated and they would be very, very angry about it or that they wouldn't be able to accept the show for what it actually is, which is, as
Yeah.
all shows are, a product of its
Right.
time. It's a very interesting discourse, and there are lots of rumors flying right now, none of which I find very credible, so I'll leave it with what I've already said. But I have
Yeah.
a feeling this isn't the last time we've heard anything about this Buffy revival.
It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to following a little more. I didn't read too much on it last week. I did see her interviews. The interesting thing of it, of course, is it happens right after we have the weekend of 1,000 deaths, right? Everybody, anyone
Yeah.
who died last weekend, and Brendan Nicholas being one
Yes.
of them, it
Yes.
revived a lot of the conversation. Even though he's not has anything to do with this new
Right.
cast, it still brought a lot of diehard fans into the mix, and they started reading up on the controversy. So I think it kind of kicked it back up a notch last week as well, with Brendan passing away. So got some very nice tributes from his co-stars from there,
Yes.
and so yeah, so it was. I don't think the story's over yet. I think you're right, 100%.
No, and there was talk that eventually they were not in the pilot, but there was talk that other legacy characters, such as Xander, the character that he played, would
Right,
eventually come back and appear on the show. So I think it's interesting. You make a great point about that because there's obviously an emotional time for Buffy fandom and for the creative people involved with the
right.
show. So we'll see how that affects any chance of revival going forward. Speaking of things that are not going forward, I'd like to pivot a little bit to another show we've talked about on this podcast here quite a bit, which is Starfleet Academy, the Star Trek show, which
Don't feel
just
so
wrapped its
good.
second season and has already been canceled. Now, the second season, we should add, has not aired yet. It won't air for something like another year. The post production on it's nowhere near finished. But apparently, Paramount is not happy with the viewership, which never cracked the Nielsen streaming top 10. The
Right,
show does not appear to be very popular, certainly not proportional to the cost, because it is a very, very expensive show with all the special effects. And some of the big name cast members, such as Holly Hunter and Paul Giamatti, who appear on the show. It's interesting because as a Star Trek lover, I watched it and I didn't totally hate it, but it never quite felt like Star Trek to me. It felt like Degrassi or like Beverly Hills 90210 sort of in Star Trek drag. And that was a conscious effort by Paramount to attract younger viewers.
right,
But I think the problem with that is you're not actually giving them what Star Trek is. Like, you need to find a way to give them what Star Trek is, which is science fiction, and it's about exploration, and it's about clash of cultures, and it's about personal growth, and all these different things. It's not just
Right.
about hormones and who's going with who to the Starfleet, prom or whatever, which is sort of what the show kind of lingered on, which is part of why it was not all that engaging, in my opinion. You need to find a way to attract the younger viewers while still giving them an idea of what real Star Trek is. And that in the show wasted a lot of its really great cast members, people like Gina Yashir and Tig Notaro and Holly Hunter,
Right.
who are great, but they were all secondary characters to a group of really generic characters that are played by pretty and talented actors who just don't have that much to work with. We've seen a
Yeah.
thousand different shows at this point about high schoolers. How do I ask her to the prom? Oh, he's dealing with personal issues. He has something in his past. He's damaged because he has mommy issues. Right, we get it. Adults can deal with those things too, and oftentimes are a lot more interesting than teenagers, at least where an adult audience is concerned. But the point of Star Trek is adventure and exploration, and there was very, very little of that in the show.
Yeah, I think it hooked the diehards in, but I don't think it brought anyone outside of the fandom in to stay for a
no,
while.
yeah,
So I think that was probably its biggest thing. Like you said, it didn't crack top 10 streaming ever. So I had not seen any of it yet, so I wasn't aboard that train yet. But it didn't get a lot of buzz around. Got a lot of buzz when it premiered,
yes.
but the buzz died relatively quickly. So I didn't even get back into it because it just was not everything I think everyone was hoping it to be. But yeah,
No, and there are outside forces at work here that I guess we should mention at least in passing. One being that Alex Kurtzman, who's sort of the Star Trek czar for Paramount and has been for the past
right,
few years, he wrote the awful J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, and then sort of oversaw these, which is also
yeah,
controversial among Trek fans because the aesthetic is very plastic and very overlit and shiny, which is what the Abrams movies were and not what Trek really was in its previous movie incarnations or during the period of Next Generation or the original series. It's a very sort of divisive um, uh, aesthetic. His contract, Alex Kurtzman's contract, is ending, I believe, next year. So
mm,
before any of this was even announced, there was speculation that Paramount would not renew him because the Ellisons think they need to reboot the universe yet again. It's not clear what exactly that will look like, if it will be just a new series or a new slate of series, or if they're going to try and actually reboot Star Trek yet again, a la what Abrams did, where it's a different Kirk and Spock and Uhura, et cetera, and they're out
right,
doing things we've already seen them do. I think personally that would be a big, big mistake because we've already
yeah,
seen that and we've seen it recently. And the beauty of Trek is that you can basically do anything you want to.
yeah,
So, and if Star Trek fans offer any indication, there is a lot of interest in seeing a legacy type show that would see older characters come back and have new adventures in the original Star Trek timeline
right,
alongside a group of new characters. Personally, I think that would probably be the way to go, and maybe bring in a more experienced science fiction showrunner. Terry Matlis, who oversaw Picard, is one name that gets tossed around quite a bit. Michael Chabon, who oversaw the first couple seasons of Picard, he would be wonderful. I think they have great possibilities. Drew Goddard. There are a lot that sort of going around right now that could be great for Trek, but it all depends on what the Ellisons want, and if they just want generic sci-fi junk, Trek fans are not
right.
going to be happy.
Yeah, we gotta hope. I mean, it's a great franchise. You never want
Yeah,
to see a franchise lose hope in it. So, and Hollywood does love to keep making things over and over again. So, like
yeah,
I said, it just depends on the direction they pick. But yeah, I have not got into that one yet. I did read that news. A little sad for everyone, I understand. I did get to, however, weekend this past weekend. I teased about it maybe a month ago or so, that Amazon Prime brought one of my favorite novels to the screen, the Kay Scarpetta series.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought it was going to be like a movie, like a television movie. Turned out to be an eight episode miniseries on Prime. Cast the most amazing cast you ever heard of, David. It had Nicole Kidman as Scarpetta.
Ooh,
It had what's the Simon Baker as her husband, who I
okay.
love from The Mentalist. Jamie Lee Curtis as her sister. Bobby Cannavale as a lover.
Yeah.
Um, Ariana Dubois as the female, the scientific lesbian lead of it. I mean, the cast was absolutely fantastic. I read all of the books. Kay Scarpetta series books are amazing, and the series was just ho hum for me. So it's
That's
gotten
unfortunate.
some great reviews, but it did a time hop thing I wasn't overly happy with. When you're, I mean, when you base something on a book, there's so much detail in the book you have in your head that they
Yeah.
can't necessarily bring to in a series. So there was a lot of lore from the books that I saw missing in there. And the time hop was hard because they talked about pre when the books first started out to current day to make the story new and fresh, something you haven't read about before. And so it was, I don't know, it was a little different. But the cast, I got to tell you, some of the best acting I've seen, the lighting of it, the mood of it. So I'm impressed with Prime for putting it out there. But if you want to see some good acting, I recommend taking care of that on Prime. But wasn't my favorite story of the season yet.
That's unfortunate. I have not read any of the Scarpetta novels, so I don't have any kind of allegiance to it. I'm now tempted hearing you talk about it. I'm tempted to check it out and just see what my reaction as a neophyte would be. Sometimes, there's a movie called From Hell that I love that I had not read the original novel that it's based on, but people who have read the novel truly, truly hate because the movie is a mystery and the book is not. And
Right.
so it's interesting when you go to something blind, sometimes you can enjoy it a lot more than if you are someone that
Yeah,
actually
you may
knows
like
the
it that
origin.
way. Patricia Cornwell's a fantastic author, openly lesbian, really does the deep dive research. I mean, her books involves the FBI and the body farm, she's a medical examiner of the state. And so there's a lot of forensic detail in it that's very interesting. And they brought that pretty well into the series. But yeah, so if you want, if you want a good watch, not what I was hoping for the book, but just an excellent cast done really well. Scarpetta to see on Prime is a pretty good example.
All right, cool.
What do you got next, my friend?
I have the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, which is the fourth Spider-Man movie starring Tom Holland and Zendaya that is wrapped shooting. It became the first trailer in history to get 1 billion views. It was very, very popular
In
trailer.
4 days. In
In 4
four days.
days, yes. Extraordinarily popular. There seems to be a lot of anticipation and love for this cast and for the character of Spider-Man, which should not, given how successful those movies have all been, we really shouldn't be surprised by that. Uh,
Right.
it's interesting to me. They're introducing a fairly newish villain called Mr. Negative for Peter to fight, and we do finally see he's fighting the Scorpion, at least in one scene, which looks pretty cool. But after, No Way Home, which was the last movie that brought back both Tobey Maguire and our Andrew Garfield's incarnations of Spider-Man, as well as the classic villains from the other movies, which were always the best point of it, Dr. Octopus and the Green Goblin and the Sandman and the Lizard and Electro. It seems like anything's going to be a step down. And I know there was a lot of behind the scenes sort of hand wringing that Marvel wanted to continue to do something epic along lines of what they had already done, and Sony
Right.
wanted to go back to something a little bit more modest and a little bit more character driven and a little bit more standalone. So there's always been this tug of war there because Sony controls the rights to Spider-Man, but Marvel actually owns the character. And so if they want to get anything done, they have to work together. We'll see. I don't know what to expect from it. I know one of the most talked about elements is that Sadie Sink, the redheaded actress from Stranger Things, is playing a character who, according to persistent rumor, is actually Jean Grey of the X-Men or a version of Jean Grey of the X-Men, which is going to lead the characters into Avengers Doomsday, where we have the original cast of the X-Men coming back, albeit not Famke Janssen, who is the original Jean Grey, as far as we know. So is this a way for them to start merging the characters together? I don't know. We will see. I have not been doing spoiler deep dives for anything rumored about Spider-Man Brand New Day because I don't know that you could really trust those at this point anyway. I have not heard anything from my usual sources about the film from within Marvel other than they have high hopes for it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I saw the trailer, loved the trailer. I was amazed. It got like 1.4 billion in those 4 days or something.
Yeah.
Amazing on the views. And like I said, it's I didn't really understand the villain part. I mean, we're talking about the negative. I'm surprised 4 episodes in, they haven't used Ned, who's kind of a villain, kind of not, and hasn't explored that yet. So we won't say anything too much more into that, but the possibilities there are huge. Very interesting. I'm looking forward to the movie, of course. Huge fan. I think Parker was probably the best Spider-Man of all of them, as much as I loved Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, and they did
Yeah.
fantastic together. But I think he has really owned Spider-Man. Tom has really owned Spider-Man. I did see also my last thing today that kind of touches on this is they announced that they are now supposedly battling for December. We have Doom,
Yes.
Avengers Doom, and Dune supposed to be opening the same day, December 18th
Yes.
this year. So that's turned into a thing. So we'll see what happens with that.
Avengers Doomsday, or whatever they, whatever portmanteau you want to adopt for that clash. You are right to bring that up because you have Doomsday is costing something like $2 billion. It's an outrageously expensive movie, and according to reports, is going to be about 3 hours long, which is wild. And then you have Dune Part 3, which was rushed into production, so you got to know that's pretty expensive too. I think it's probably a
Right.
$300 million budget, but we'll bring the Paul Atreides story to a close. We'll see how long that lasts. If you've read the Dune books, you know what I'm talking about. It's interesting that the two would clash, and it seems like the hope is from Disney, Marvel, and from Warner Brothers is that this will be the next Barbenheimer, where everybody went to see
Right.
Oppenheimer and Barbie the same weekend because they're battling it out and which is better, and it became this sort of cultural moment, this phenomenon where everybody had to go and see both movies, which were both big blockbusters. So I can tell you right now, I will be seeing both of them. I am a
Mhm.
huge fan of the X-Men, as we've talked about on the show, and that's the reason I'm going to go see the new Avengers movie, which I have no real affection for those films. And I loved Dune Part 1, Part 2. The trailer has me like itching to watch both of them again because Dune Part 3 looks terrific. And I've read it's the second book in the series. It'll be the third movie in the series. The book is very, very interesting. It's much more of a political thriller and has a lot more, I think, plot and momentum to it. It's a much shorter book than Dune, which is interesting also. But already, they're introducing Robert Pattinson as a character named Cytale, who's a shapeshifter.
Right.
Jason Momoa, who was killed off in the first movie, is back. I won't spoil how he comes back to anyone that doesn't know, but that becomes a major plot point in the movies, and Florence Pugh and Zendaya battling it out for control of Paul and thus control of the Empire and the universe. There's a lot going on in Doom Part 3 that I think people are, certainly those who enjoyed the first two films, people are really going to be looking forward to, assuming they pull all those over from the novels, and I'm sure that they will.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, like I said, they're already starting to promote. I mean, I saw James Marsden the other day on Jimmy Kimmel
Yeah.
because he's featured prominently in the trailer Cyclops, of course, for Doom. So they're
Yes.
really getting it. From what I read, also, which is interesting, like the 18th is the first weekend of the winter break, right? So
Oh,
there's definitely room for legs for people to see both films. That's why they're kind of hoping for both. An interesting characteristic of it, though, that'll see what might affect box office numbers is Dune has a lock on every IMAX. This will be the
yes.
first Avengers not opening in an IMAX theater. So they're putting heavily on all of the other Dolby Sound 4K whatever theaters that are out there. That's their product. But this will be the first Avengers movie not available in IMAX because Dune has it sewn up for I think 2 to 3 weeks. So it's going to make box out, and that they always charge 8 times for that stupid IMAX or whatever. So money wise, it could help Dune a
Yeah.
lot because of the holiday season. Both movies can get some traction. It's going to be very interesting to see how it
Yes.
plays out.
And let it be said, the Dune movies are the rare films that are actually worth paying for the IMAX. It was shot in IMAX. It's the Vistas. Denny Villeneuve has an amazing eye. absolutely breathtaking in IMAX, especially with the sound, because there are all kinds of crazy sound tricks that they do in Dune also. So I cannot wait to see either of them. Like I say, X-Men, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart. I'm there. I don't love the Avengers, but if you guys are using them, and apparently they have significant roles in the movie, it's not just some little cameo, I will be there. So
Going to be fun, my friend. That's all I had. What else do you have? Anything to wrap us up with?
tonight, I'm seeing the tour of Spamalot the musical at the Pantages Theater. It's opening night. I'm excited because I've actually never seen Spamalot, if you can believe it. It's
Really?
been around for
Oh,
20 years.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the movie upon which it's based, and I love Monty Python humor, so I'm very much looking forward to it. Hopefully I won't be disappointed. I look forward to talking about this cast and this production on the show next week.
You're in for a treat. It's a fun show. We talked a couple weeks ago about our good friend Artie O'Daly and Bad Boy.
Yes, another good
Bad
point.
Boy had the wrap party this past Saturday. The entire cast got together and watched the final episode and had a great kind of team. Artie right now has a potential Indiegogo fundraiser for a new season, and
Oh,
he is going to be our very special guest next week to talk to. And then we'll get into your spam lot of it all. But I hope everyone will tune in next week if you are a fan of Bad Boy, as David and I are, and Artie O'Daly. So great show next week as well, my friend.
very much looking forward to that. I guess we should mention at this point that the season finale, which may or may not be the final episode of Bad Boy, I believe drops this weekend, Bad Boy in Paris. So,
It goes.
which reunites most of the original cast, which will be very fun. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Those shows, that show, it's so funny that it gets funnier the longer it goes along, and the more that you start to understand just sort of Artie O'Daly's strange sense of humor with all of it.
It's amazing. Yeah.
There's something real, and those characters become very, very endearing. I was very impressed as I sort of you were the one that actually got me hooked on it. After the first couple of seasons had come out, I started watching and I was like, oh, why am I can't stop watching this. This is really, really funny. So
It's a
everybody check
great
out Bad
story.
Boy.
I'll let him tell it next week. I mean, it took years to finish the first season.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about cast moving away, so we'll let him talk about all that next week. But it is a very, very well written. I've told Artie, and I think I've told you, it's very Gilmore Girl-esque. The writing he does is very snappy, patter back and forth between the characters. I really enjoy it. So, yeah, that'll be fun. So this will be coming out this Friday, David. You're going to be sitting at a table
Yes.
somewhere. Why don't we close on that? Let everyone know what you have going on this weekend.
So I am appearing at WonderCon, which is a major genre and comic book convention in Anaheim, California. I will be a special guest there of Prism Comics, booth 1401. I will be selling my books and signing them to anyone who would like a copy, and interacting with our listeners from this show and from my own show on YouTube. So, and leading, we should also give a shout out. The No Kings protests are Saturday. Everybody find a protest and go protest. And if there is no protest in your area and you cannot get to a protest somewhere in the general region, go put a sign out that says screw Donald Trump and we're sick of this. Make your voice heard. Obviously, we don't want to go off into a huge digression about this, but if you've seen any news in the past year and a half, you know what I'm talking about. We're now engaged in an illegal war. American citizens are being killed. There is flagrant corruption in the White House. There's violation of the law, violation of American civil liberties. There is a lot going on that we need to make our voices heard. So at WonderCon, I will be wearing my No Kings shirt on Saturday, and hopefully drumming up some support, talking to people, and raising a little protest of my own.
All right. We appreciate you tuning in every Friday. We tape this on Wednesdays, coming at you every Friday right here on YouTube and Spotify, iTunes, all of your favorite distribution podcast networks. I'm Scott. That's David. We will see you next week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.